Is the Canon EOS R1, the supposed master of everything, getting dual CFexpress Type-C card slots, capable of writing a sustained 8 GB per second? Stick around after this short break for all the details. But first, subscribe to this channel for a chance to win a Canon EOS R5. I'll be giving one away to one lucky subscriber once this channel reaches 100,000 subscribers. Anyone above the age of 18 with a valid mailing address is eligible. Additional terms and conditions are linked in the description down below. Earlier this morning, a source told me that the Canon EOS R1 is going to be getting dual CFexpress card slots. Not really a surprise. You knew that, I knew that. And if we go back to 2020, when the Canon EOS R5 came out, it actually had a single CFexpress Type-B card slot. And the Canon EOS R3, the same thing. Bit of a surprise at $59.99. We're expecting it to have dual CFexpress Type-B card slots. Well, what's surprising about this rumor or about this information that my source provided me with is that the Canon EOS R1 is not going to have Type-B card slots, but it's going to have Type-C card slots. That's right, Type-C card slots. So I pressed my source a little bit. I asked some more questions. I didn't want to run with it right away. There was a few red flags, and I'll get to those in just a moment. But my source said that essentially they got it directly from the horse's mouth. Now, they didn't actually say they got it from the horse's mouth, but I want to protect my source. I don't want to give out too much information, but let's put it this way. It's not going through a whole team of people this time, from a source that heard it from a source that heard it from a source that heard it from somebody on a factory floor working for Canon in a third-party type situation. No, there are very few people in this chain of information. So I asked a few more questions, and one of the things that my source said is, well, it's pretty common knowledge. Common knowledge that the Canon EOS R1 is getting CFexpress Type-C card slots, dual. And that's when, well, the final red flag went off, because you see, prior to this video coming out back in April 1st of 2023, earlier this year, there was no mention of CFexpress Type-C card slots. In fact, there was no mention in terms of specifications for the Canon EOS R1 in any way whatsoever. It wasn't until I put out that video where I go on for about some 15 or 16 minutes talking about specifications for the Canon EOS R1 as part of an April Fool's joke. And in there, I not only talk about CFexpress Type-C card slots, that the R1 was going to get dual, but I also had an actual CFexpress Type-C card. This is one right here. This is a CFexpress Type-C card, and it's considerably bigger than a Type-B. You can see them lined up side by side here. It's quite huge. And you can imagine this going inside the R1. In fact, two of them. Not only is it bigger, but it's thicker as well. So prior to this video, there was no mention of any EOS R1 specs. All we got is that it would be the master of everything, built from the ground up, not being built from the parts bin. And while my source could be correct, let me share with you my reasoning as to why I don't think it's going to happen and why we don't need it to happen. This slide shows CFexpress write speeds for Type A, Type B, and Type C. Type B has a maximum theoretical write speed of 2,000 megabytes per second, twice that of Type A and half that of Type C. Keep in mind, Type A has one PCIe lane, Type B 2 PCIe lanes, and Type C doubles that with 4 PCIe lanes. However, those are maximum theoretical write limits. However, none of these cards are going to reach their theoretical max write. The real-world max write speed is going to be somewhere around 620 megabytes per second. That's for Type A. We're currently seeing around 650 sustained write. For Type B, we're looking at a maximum sustained write speed of around 1,800 megabytes per second. And Type C doubles that to around 3.6 gigabytes per second. But those are Gen 3 speeds. In August, the Compact Flash Association announced Gen 4. And as you can see by this slide, the theoretical max write speed doubles. So in Type A, it's now 2,000 megabytes per second, the same as the current Type B speeds. And Type B reaches 4,000 megabytes per second, and Type C 8,000 megabytes per second. And the real world speed for Type B would be 3.6 gigabytes per second. That's right, 3.6 gigabytes per second. And better still, Gen 4 is backward compatible with Gen 3, so the Canon EOS R5, for example, to support Gen 4 doesn't really require any sort of firmware update. It just requires a CFexpress Type B card that is actually rated as Gen 4. And last month, ProGrade was the very first company to announce a CFexpress Type B Gen 4 card, delivering speeds significantly faster than traditional Gen 3. The maximum read speed, 3.4 gigabytes per second, burst write speed, 3 gigabytes per second, and the minimum sustained write speed, 2.8 gigabytes per second. So is there really any need for a CFexpress Type C card slot for the R1 to support CFexpress Type C cards when a Gen 4 CFexpress Type B card can deliver the same speeds? Does it make any sense for this larger card to have two of these in the R1? Does it really make any sense? I mean, after all, it's going to take up more than twice the amount of space. It's going to take up valuable space and architecture in the R1 when it could be used for something else. If you were to open up the Canon EOS R3, the 1DX Mark III, and look inside, what you're going to notice is the complete lack of, well, empty space, because everything is taken up and used for a purpose. The size of that camera is based on many factors, including the components that are inside, thermal management, and many other capabilities. So to actually go ahead and say, hey, we're going to put CFexpress Type C card slots in when CFexpress Type B Gen 4 is coming out and it's going to support the same speeds now, 3.6 gigabytes per second maximum sustained write speed? All right, I know what you're thinking. My video was published back in April. I mean, the beginning of April. I was working on it in March, and back then, Canon didn't have any idea that Gen 4 was coming out. I mean, after all, the announcement was made in late August. They didn't know, right? Yes, they did. I can guarantee you they did, because back when I was shooting that video for April Fools, I knew. In fact, if you look inside that video, I talk about Gen 4, and those slides that I just showed you are from that video. And this CFexpress Type C card, well, I had this back then as well. So if I knew, and who am I? I'm essentially a nobody, then you can guarantee that Canon had an idea of what was going on with the CFexpress organization, and that Gen 4 was something on the horizon. Sure, CFexpress Gen 4 Type C doubles the speed further to a theoretical 8 gigabytes per second. But unless the Canon EOS R1 is going to do something like 6K or even 24 or 32K video raw, well, there's no need for it on the video side. Right now, 8K 60 frames per second or 8K 120 frames per second requires somewhere around 650 megabytes per second sustained. Now, it's on the photography side of things that the Canon EOS R1 is certainly going to generate an awful lot more heat, an awful lot more data in transmission. And if we take a look at, well, let's assume a 45 megapixel sensor. Shooting 20 frames per second lossless RAW requires about 1.2 gigabytes per second. Now let's double that to, well, 40 frames per second, and that would require about 2.4 gigabytes per second. And if we double that even further, well, we can't double it, so let's go from, let's say, 40 frames per second up to 60 frames per second, and then that will give you, what, about 3.6 gigabytes per second? Now, if we want to double that from 40 to 80, well, that's where CFexpress Type C would come in. But would you really, as a photographer, have a need to shoot 80 frames per second, lossless RAW, at, well, 45 megapixels? It does seem an awful lot, and it's not just the ability of the storage to actually capture that information. The sensor must be capable. It's going to have a really fast stacked sensor that's capable of capturing that information, sending it to the image processor, sending it onto the bus, and then sending it directly to the card. CFexpress Type C at around, let's say, 7.2 gigabytes per second. Yeah, it could do 80 frames per second. 80 frames per second continuous shooting at 45 megapixels, or it could do 40 frames per second at something like 100 megapixels. But we're dealing with numbers that are so big and so vast that, well, it does sound great. And when we're having conversations with our friends at Sony or Nikon, we can say, look at this Canon EOS R1. It can do 80 frames per second at 45 megapixels. In fact, if it had the same resolution as the 1DX Mark III, the R3, or the Canon EOS R6 Mark II, it would be capable of shooting at an astonishing 160 frames per second. And that's just a little bit too crazy. So if we don't need those actual speeds for video or stills, then why on earth would Canon choose to put in a CFexpress Type-C card? Well, slots, 2 slots for these, for a much bigger, for heavier, and of course it would also, wouldn't it piss you off a little bit that, you know, despite having a whole bunch of CFexpress Type-B cards from your R3, your R5, and well, those just won't work in this camera. Doesn't really make any sense. Here in October of 2023, we have very little in terms of validated leak specifications on the Canon EOS R1. We do have a few things that came out, a few articles that came out since I posted my video back in April, but yeah, they don't really have any validation. They're coming from various sources, to Canon Rumors and to others, saying that the Canon EOS R1 is going to have a bevy of really impressive specifications. I mean, after all, we had a series of articles coming out saying that the Canon EOS R1 is going to be the master of everything, and it's going to have some impressive specs built from the ground up and not from the parts bin. And that was the message that was being said for a long time, and even Canon has said themselves that they're working on the R1 and have more or less given a nod to that, yes, it is going to be an impressive camera. And anybody you talk to, anybody who's connected to this industry in any way whatsoever, is hearing the reverberations that the Canon EOS R1 isn't going to be some minor update. It's going to be a huge update. It's going to be a bold update, and it's going to have a bold price. But what do you think? Do you think my source has it correct? Do you think that the Canon EOS R1 is going to have dual CFexpress Type-C card slots, these guys here? Or do you think that it's going to go ahead and use CFexpress Type-B, these guys here? And of course, with Gen 4, all you need to do to access Gen 4 capabilities is purchase a CFexpress card that has Gen 4 written on it. And unfortunately, this card doesn't have it, but at this point, ProGrade is the only company to actually manufacture a Gen 4 card, and it's not cheap. $1,400 and something. Let me check the price here. I had it just a moment ago. The price of that Gen 4 is $1,459.99 for a capacity of 1.3 terabytes. So they're already out there right now, and with the R1 coming out, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more announcements from Angelbird, SanDisk, and others supporting Gen 4. We don't need to do anything crazy like change the architecture to support 2 of these. I wish I had 2 of them side by side, but this is actually a case for an SD card slot. But if we put them side by side, we can see that it takes up pretty much a centimeter head on. And you know they're going to be spaced apart. So look at that. It's basically 3/4 of an inch looking at it this way. And of course, looking at it this side here, you can just see the size of it. And again, these are the dimensions of Type-C, 54 millimeters by 74 millimeters by 5 millimeters. And Type-B, we can see it's 38.5 by 29.8 by 3.8 millimeters. So it's a whole millimeter thicker. And when you're putting these side by side, that's taking up a significant amount of room. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Maybe I should do a poll about this. Is the Canon EOS R1 going to have dual CFexpress Type-B cards or Type-C? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And if you want to stay up to date on all things Canon, the Canon EOS R1, the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, what EFS lenses are supposed to be coming out, or what EF, no, I said EF, what RF and RFS lenses are supposed to be coming out. Canon Rumors has just said that we're getting more lenses this month, and I'm really excited by that. We were all surprised by the 10 to 20 millimeter f4, with the exception of the Camera Insider, which had the lead scoop on that one, but nobody else did. Although according to Sony Alpha Rumors, we are supposed to be getting a 200 to 800 millimeter sometime around November the 2nd. But if you do want to stay up to date on the latest and greatest news and rumors regarding Canon, Sony, Nikon, Panasonic, OM, Systems, and everybody else, then go ahead and subscribe, but make sure you also choose all notifications. And for all those minor news stories, go ahead and follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter. So for all those news stories that aren't quite big enough to have their own separate video, pricing information, patent information, well, I always tweet those out. And if you want to help support this channel, whenever you're interested in purchasing from Adorama, B&H, or Amazon.com, consider using my affiliate links down below. Whenever you purchase through those, I get a small percentage back, a commission, usually between 2 to 6%, but sometimes there's special deals going up to 12%, and that helps fund this channel. It helps, well, with the purchase of cameras such as the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, which is coming out probably to be announced sometime around CP+, The Canon EOS R1 is going to be announced next year, and my plan is to purchase both of those. And based on my expected cost of each one, I have funding in place. So for any of you that have purchased using my affiliate links before, thank you so much. It really does help this channel grow, and it's very greatly appreciated. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon. I expect October to get very interesting, or I expect there to be a lot more announcements and leaks coming over the next few weeks. And of course, Sony's supposed to be announcing several cameras. We're up to 3 cameras registered now. What could we have besides the A9 III, the A7S IV? After just 3.5 years? I don't know. The A7S IV, perhaps. What about another FX camera? We'll just have to see. I hope whatever Sony releases, they're not just taking stuff from the parts bin, giving us a derivation of what is in the A7S III, but giving us something new to compete against what Nikon's done with the Nikon Z8 and to compete against what Canon's supposed to be coming out with the R1 and the R5 Mark II. But that's it for now. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.